Hello there, welcome to One on One. My name is Bridgett Otoo. Weed, marijuana. I hope you're not one of those who shiver or quiver when they hear weed or think of aimless, mad, or people Rasta are the ones using it. This, what people call a magical drug, is given millions to countries like Canada, the USA. Why has Ghana not taken advantage of it? What is the real challenge to this? There are advocates in Ghana, like late former UN General Secretary Kofi Annan, the boss of Ghana Standards Authority, Professor Alex Dodu, sports analyst, and the president of Hemp Association of Ghana, Nana Kwaku Agyemang, and actor John Dumelo have been advocating for the legalization of it. Today, we have one of the advocates in our studio to discuss this, the challenge to legalizing hemp or cannabis in this country and the understanding of it. How do we get people to understand that it is positive for the country rather than negative? And as a former host of You and the Police, I have been part of several operations with the Ghana Police Service, and with the benefit of hindsight, I regret that so much because I had no knowledge of what it is that we were doing. Nana Agyemang, welcome to One on One.
Thank you very much, Bridget.
What's the fear? You know, I deliberately said weed. You know, when you hear it, you're thinking, oh my God, aimless people. But I'm telling you, trust me, doctors, pharmacists, people who are doing it, it's not your regular Joe. At all. What's the fear? Why are people so afraid to just talk about it, to go into? What's the fear?
Well, I think it stems back over a period of time. You know, marijuana, cannabis, weed, tampi, whatever you want to call it, sensimilia, has been bastardized by the West for a very long time. And it's been something that we've taken up from the West. We've taken it up and we've run with it. And it's just like when, 15 years ago, when you saw someone with dreadlocks, children would run away from that person because parents would have told their children that we see someone who's got locks, it's a bad person, he'll take you away, he'll do this and that. It's a similar thing with cannabis. In this day and age, you have intellectuals, elite intellectuals, who will tell you that if you consume weed through smoking it, then you will become mad. You've got a leading psychiatric nurse, if you like, is a doctor, in fact, Dr. Akwesi Osei, he will tell you that if you smoke it, you will be mad. There's no empirical evidence at all. And if you go to the psychiatric wards, we're not even equipped to even determine that anyway, but they will like to point you to one or two people and said, oh, that person has smoked weed.
But the overdose of everything is bad, really. It's not even hemp. There are people in psychiatric halls who are there because of relationship failure, not smoking weed.
No, well, you see, the thing about it is there are many factors that can trigger a psychiatric case. Right. Smoking cigarette can trigger it off. Drinking alcohol can trigger it off. A relation breakdown can trigger it off. There's so many different things in the social infrastructure that could trigger off what we would term as madness. And you talk about overdose. If you consume weed to the point where, let's say, you overdose, the only thing you'll do is sleep. There's nothing else you can do. You will just go to sleep. You may have the munchies before, crispy things you'll want to be eating and what have you, biscuits, peanuts, etc. But apart from that, you're going to sleep. When you overdose on alcohol, you may jump into your car, drive it erratically, kill a few people on the way, have an accident. That's from the overdose of alcohol. Right. But yet that is legal. That is something that is legal. Even smoking of cigarettes, we now caution you on the side of the box and we say, look, this will kill you if you consume it. People are purchasing it, they're patronizing it, they're using it. But these things are legal. I think there's so many things, so many aspects of this that we have to understand, and we've not taken time to understand it. We've just run along with white racist propaganda and said, no, this thing is bad.
But now they are even changing because they've seen the benefits of it. But I want to take you back. I mean, when you say 15 years ago or maybe 20 years ago, if you saw somebody, with dreads, then you're thinking that, okay, either they are going to be mad or because they smoke weed. But is it really years ago? Was it not just last year that a young man, brilliant young man who gained admission to Agyemang school, but the school would deny him because of his dreadlocks?
Yeah. Two young boys.
Two young boys. Tyrone and Magai, right?
Yeah.
So it's not
Tyrone
Magai, yes. So it's not 15 years ago. Why is that still prevalent? Why? Why are we still seeing this just as early as just a couple of months ago?
Well, it's funny. I mean, because you've got Magai and you've got
brilliant
the other boy who's in Krabia. And they both entered into the school. But you see, what we have to understand about that is these schools that have been established with the mottos and the songs that we sing and all this kind of thing, the origin isn't ours. The origin doesn't belong to us. It belongs to those people who colonized us. All these big schools, St. Augustine, this, that. These are schools that white people established. They had their white values as part of the structure of the school. And when they left, then we took it on. Right? Now, one of the things you need to understand is that one of the things our colonizers used to do with us to reduce our self-esteem was to cut our hair. That is what they used to do. They used to cut our hair down to the basic minimum, and that would make us feel much less of ourselves. The pride that we had in ourselves would have been reduced to an all-time low level. This is one of the principles they have in the schools right now, because look, you've got Nkrabia, you've got Magai. They were both going to Agyemang school. And one thing that was clear about it, the girls of Asian descent, the girls of European descent, they were able to have their hair flowing down. But all of us of African descent, it was denied because of the influence of the white people in establishing that school in the first place. It's a racist practice that we have adorned and believe it is the right way to go, whereas it isn't the right way to go. So you're right. Perhaps it's not 20 years down the line. It's even a year ago.
Yes.
But these two boys have turned out to be the brightest sparks. I mean, Nkrabia now goes to Ghana International School, and Magai is still at Agyemang school.
But it was shocking and shameful that the school, the Agyemang school, was unapologetic about it. Their association, the All Students Association, we issued a statement to back the decision of the school, which was rooted, like you're saying, and I say same, I hold the same view, that rooted in colonial racist foundation.
Well, they're neo-colonialists, aren't they? And let's face it, like over 75% of Ghanaians all subscribe to this neo-colonialist type of thinking. It's something it's ingrained in the mind. It's something that affects the entire continent, to be totally truthful with you. Because, here's me, I'm a Ghanaian, unable to speak fluently my own language, Asante Tree, but I'm able to speak the English.
Right.
You go to Senegal or just across the road there to Burkina, they're able to speak French fluently, but not able to speak their own language. It's neo-colonialism, and we've been unable to get rid of that cloak that covers us so that we can now be ourselves, recognizing the richness of our own culture and taking that forward in everyday life. So, when you relate that back to the experience of cannabis or marijuana or whatever you want to call it, the Narcotics Control Commission, in the publications that they put out, have called cannabis Bonsum Tawa. I mean, it can't get any worse than that, because this is a plant that God has put there. And we claim to be so religious. We'll go to church. There's people at church even now. Today, right now, they're at church. Instead of seeking employment or working, they're at church. That we're religious fanatics. But there's certain basics we fail to recognize. That cannabis plant is something that was put on the earth by God. And it has so many different uses, so many different healing properties, that we've refused to recognize it because we've taken on somebody else's culture, we've taken on somebody else's principles, and we've thrown our principles away.
Right. We'll talk about, law enforcement and what, if you come to Ghana here, beyond Narcotic Controls Board, what the police is even empowered to do and the kind of swoops that they do. And I've been part of a lot of swoops when I hosted that program, and I thought we were catching bad people. And like you said, at the time I was ill-informed, had no idea what was happening. But the more you read, you're like, oh my goodness, what are we doing? So I want to talk about the fact that the hemp is in a lot of products that is legal. Almost every hair product, the fundamental, the main ingredient is hemp. So why is it that we're using it there, but it's illegal? You can't plant it. What's the?
Well, let me differentiate for you. Let me break the thing down for you. You have cannabis sativa, you have cannabis ruderalis, you have cannabis indica. Now, in Ghana's situation, for example, the law was passed in March 2020, which gave the minister the power to award licenses for the cultivation of hemp. Now, there's a classic difference between hemp and marijuana. Right. Now,
what's the difference?
The difference is that the tetrahydrocannabidiol within the hemp is much less.
That was so easy to pronounce. I struggled to pronounce tetrahydrocannabinol. Okay,
well, it's short,
right.
THC. Right? That is the compound within the cannabis that makes you high. Yes. Now, the law said that the minister has the power to award licenses for people who wish to cultivate industrial hemp. Now, industrial hemp is exactly as it says. It's industrial. The chair you're sitting in, it will make it. The studio we're in, it can make it. It can produce bioplastics. As you know, stuff for your hair, various cosmetics, shampoo, soap. Back in the 1920s, Henry Ford made a car out of hemp and fueled it with hemp as well. There are light aircrafts that are flying around the world now that have been made totally out of industrial hemp, and they are fueled as well by hemp. Right? That is where we are. So we seem to get mixed up, and I'll give you a classic. I had an interview on Metro TV about 2 days ago. Okay. We were talking about the Supreme Court and this and that and what have you. Now, I'm giving them the same explanation that industrial hemp only has 0.3 THC, and that is all that the law allows us to cultivate. The law is specific in saying that we cannot cultivate cannabis for recreational use. Section 43 is specific. Now, whilst I'm having this interview with TV3, the images with Metro TV, sorry. The images that are being portrayed are of cannabis with THC much more than
the 0.23.
Exactly. You are seeing people's hands with Rizla, and the weed is in there, and this and that and what. All the images create this serious confusion. I'm talking about industrial hemp. The interview is about industrial hemp, but the images that you're portraying to the public at large is about marijuana, is about weed. And this is the biggest problem. You see, the media, I think they're transfixed on getting eyeballs. And so, on many occasions, they give the wrong impression. They paint and tell the wrong story. Stories. Do you understand? And that adds to confusion. It was the Christian community.
It could be that it's not deliberate, it's also that they don't know.
But I'm explaining it to them. I could be explaining it to you now, and perhaps there might be a cutaway, and you'll show cannabis,
And I'll make sure we
you'll
don't
show
do that.
somebody smoking some weed.
I'll make sure we don't
Meanwhile,
do that. I'll make sure
we're not talking about that.
Yeah.
So that is one of the biggest problems. When you say about the fear, that is one of the biggest problems, because somehow, I don't know, we fear talking about people using weed recreationally. Meanwhile, Ghana is ranked number 3 on the continent for the use of cannabis recreationally. And, you know, I always ask, so who are the people who are smoking it then? Because it's normally associated with people who have hairstyles like mine.
Yours.
Yeah, but the fact of the matter is, to get
people who look like me are doing it.
Exactly. It's people who look like you.
Yes, me.
You know, it's the policemen, it's the army personnel, it's the lawyers, it's the doctors, it's the nurses, it's the parliamentarians, it's the judges, it's the prosecutors. These are the people who go back home.
This is the first time my phone is.
Who go back home and smoke within the security of their home. And yet they come out publicly to say, no, it should be down on the low. It shouldn't be this and that and what. But they're the ones who are smoking it, because you don't have 5,000 Rastafarians in Ghana.
I need to understand something here. The law allows for industrial, right? And yet for recreational, like you said, I mean, a lot of people are doing it. And there's a certain fear there. Do people even know that there are differences in the plants? And how do you know that this one has, you know, is it 80? THC of 0.23.
Yeah.
Explain that to me, because
well,
I don't
they're
get
different.
It. Yeah.
If you cultivate industrial hemp, it can grow to 16 or 20 feet tall. It's thin, and it just zooms up. If you're cultivating cannabis, that grows outwards, and it produces the buds that, when dried and processed, you can put in your pipe or put in your Rizla. Put in toffees, cakes,
and that's what a lot of
cooking.
people know.
Yeah, of course, it's lovely. Right. You know, from the industrial hemp you can extract the cannabidiol, but you can also extract the cannabidiol from the cannabis as well. But of course, it will have a lot more THC than cannabidiol from the hemp. And the cannabidiol from the hemp can be used for autism, epilepsy, degenerative diseases. It's anti-inflammatory, it can deal with depression, anxiety, and a whole host of health issues. And so can cannabis with high THC. In fact, the cannabis with the THC deals with all the cancers. You know, the pharmaceuticals won't want you to say this, but to be perfectly honest with you, when it comes to cannabis with THC of 5% and over, it can totally eradicate cancer within the body, whether it be breast cancer, throat cancer, prostate cancer, whatever cancer, cannabis can actually deal with it and knock it on the head. You see? So people need to understand that the law as it stands right now isn't talking about recreational cannabis. Isn't talking about cannabis for adult use.
Is that what you're advocating for?
The advocacy is about the use of industrial hemp. What we say is this: look, if we're to be real about the whole thing, we need to have the conversation about the legalization of cannabis for recreational use, but mentally, we're not ready for that yet.
What's the challenge there? Why are we not mentally ready to legalize for recreational purposes? Cannabis?
Well, as I said, because there's this phobia about everybody going mad, you know, when
because of the high percentage of
THC, but it's not the case. I mean, look, people have been smoking cannabis for years in Holland. When I was studying in the UK, people would take trips to Holland for the weekend just to go and smoke, and then they'd come back and go and do their work, or back in the universities, etc. Nobody's going mad. In Canada, they legalized recreational use of cannabis 2018. No one's going mad. Instead, over the 4-year period, they've added 43 billion to their gross domestic product. No one's going mad. In the USA, many states again. Look, you look in New York.
They allow you to carry a certain quantity.
Exactly.
Yes, for recreational
purpose. Carry, you can smoke wherever you want to be. No one's going mad. But we still hold on to these things, and it calls for a much broader debate of all the stakeholders, because we're all stakeholders. Whether you understand it or not, you're a stakeholder. And it calls for a broader debate of all stakeholders. Those who are elitist intellectually, they should be there, so that we can discuss the whole thing, so that we can help them to understand actually what they are talking about, instead of just saying, oh, it's a bad thing, it's the devil's thing, because it's not. Alcohol is more the devil's product than anything else, if the truth be told. And alcohol kills. Cannabis hasn't killed anyone.
Okay, so are we in a situation, especially for a continent like ours, where we're third in the use of cannabis, for recreational purposes? Are we in that spot where we're waiting again for the West to legalize it in all the countries and say, oh, it's good before we follow? And in this case, they'll probably have taken over the market, and then we'll again be wondering, why is that decision?
That challenge is there. And I must say that Malawi have legalized. Malawi was a large producer of tobacco. The president of Malawi came out himself when he realized that they were down in terms of GDP by over $200 million US. And he said, look, farmers, stop cultivating tobacco because it's not going anywhere. Everyone start cultivating weed. And that's what they're doing, right? South Africa is the same. Zambia is the same. Zimbabwe is the same. Lesotho is the same. Eswatini is the same. And they're making huge profits. They're building up their economy with the cultivation of weed for recreational use. The one thing they've done is they've said, okay, our people won't participate in it, and we'll cultivate it for export. And they're doing that, and they're benefiting. We are not doing anything like that. We are preventing ourselves from coming in on the market just on industrial hemp at 0.3%, because we are totally ignorant that industrial hemp is not for recreational purposes. And no matter how many times you put that
more and
message
more people are going
across,
to be taking it for recreational purposes.
Yeah, that's what they think. Meanwhile, you can't. You can't. It's not something that you will ingest through smoke. It's not something that you will make toffees with. It's something that you can build a house with. It's something you can build a hospital with. Something that you can build a school with.
Wait, so help me. So in other words, even with the power, the legalization of it, it is just for industrial purposes, which does not allow for making the toffees, smoking it, nothing of a sort. And yet there is more illegal use of it for recreational purposes, not the industrial one, but the one with a higher percentage of THC.
Well, there's bigger farms there, of course. I mean, you've seen that they've been hitting the farms.
I know.
I mean, look, the fact of the matter is Ghana has been cultivating weed for generations. And when you go to these farms, what you will find out is that it was a hand-me-down from great-grandfather to grandfather to father and to son. And they've been cultivating for years, selling to Benin, selling to the Ivory Coast, selling to Nigeria. It's something. And the fact of the matter is the authorities know. Look, let me tell you something. Do you think you could have a farm of 80 hectares and no one in authority knows about it? It was a tip-off that led them there. And that's how these farms are raided. There's always some infighting. Oh, my cut has been reduced, okay, I'm going to tell. And they tell. But let me tell you this, apart from that, these people who are supposed to be the ones, the law, the authorities and whatever, they are paid. And they accept that money willingly, and they turn a blind eye, and they allow they allow the cannabis to be cultivated and to be shipped here or there or what have you, blah, blah, blah. It's how they earn their money. It's how they earn their money. Let me tell you, from the police to immigration to narcotics control, everybody's involved. Everyone's involved. And we should know that this is the case. Look, we've had cocaine turn into what before? From HMV Benjamin.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? We've had cocaine that was confiscated from a flower and it's on its way up to Accra. It has disappeared. How has it disappeared? It's in the hands of the authorities and it's gone missing. Why? How? It's because they're all a part of the whole thing.
Is there any stakeholder conversation going on about it for recreational purposes? Yes, we know industrial.
No, there isn't. There isn't. And as I say,
but why is it closed completely?
It's too early. It's too early. You see, the powers that be, you've got to educate people first. And that's why I'm sitting here with you to say that, look, the Christian community are against it because they do not understand that what the law has said we can do is not for recreational use. We just have to keep hammering this all the time. It's not for recreational use. We can produce hempcrete that can build your church. People need to know that. We can produce bioplastic, biodegradable plastic, whereby
good for the environment.
Exactly, every time it rains, because our drains are choked with plastic, everything overflows, we get flooding, etc., etc. If we cultivate industrial hemp, we can produce plastic bottles that will biodegrade in 16 to 20 weeks. So if you left it here on the floor of your studio, it would disappear. Do you understand?
Yes.
It's got to be a good thing. Yeah. Look, when you look at the environment, we're talking about recently on the news, I've seen this stuff, we've raided the Galamsey. You can look at the water, how dirty the water is, how poison the water is. If you cultivate industrial hemp in those waters, you will eventually clean those waters up, because the industrial hemp absorbs all the toxins in its leaves and everything. And you can cultivate it after 16 weeks and still sell it, still gain money from it. It's the same with the land that has been used for large-scale mining or galamsey. You've got farmers who originally received money and now they're sitting and they're looking at the land and they can't do anything to the land. If we cultivate industrial hemp on all those toxic lands, we will eventually reclaim the land. We're talking about land reclamation on a large scale, which will now allow the farmers to go back to the land and start cultivating high-value crops.
Okay.
The industrial hemp itself, when you cultivate industrial hemp, it sequestrates the carbon out of the atmosphere. It absorbs the carbon. Now we're talking about reducing global warming.
Right.
And so it propagates that phobia. It adds to the phobia.
Okay.
Because people just can't tell the difference.
Then Agyemang, we're taking a break.